Alright guys, time to wrap everything up with a nice little bow. Let's end on a slightly lighter topic, but one that of course, as always, still has bigger implications down the road. Let's say I am recording this as usual on a Friday after work, so that means that yesterday, August 5th, conservative commentator, mainstream conservative commentator, and Blaze TV hostess Allie Beth Stuckey was actually thrown into Twitter jail for 12 hours. And her horrible crime against humanity was that she called Laurel Hubbard, the transgender woman Olympian who bombed out of every single event he attempted to compete in, a man. Twitter then notified Stuckey that this violated their rules against hateful conduct, and she was thrown into the Twitter clink for 12 hours. Now, to be perfectly honest, gang, I couldn't care whether Stuckey was banished from Twitter for 12 hours, 12 days, or 12 years. I don't particularly care for Allie Beth Stuckey. I think that, like a lot of mainstream conservative commentators, she has found a nice little gig for herself. She has found a way to make a living by throwing up her hands and tearing out her hair at everything that the left does, while not really doing anything about it. And she was the commentator, I remember last year when all the riots and the insurrections were happening across the country. And in Seattle or Portland, some Antifa thugs had torn down and desecrated a statue of General Washington. And Stuckey's only response to that was to go on Twitter and to say, oh, look at the stupidity. Crying face emoji, crying face emoji, crying face emoji, crying face emoji. And I wanted to say, ma'am, if your only response, if your only emotional reaction to this is sadness because, oh, it's so stupid, and not righteous indignation and anger and fury that the father of our country is now being openly attacked in this way, then you're worse than useless. I also don't particularly care for her because she has been trying several times now to do this just absolutely stupid thing where she says, oh, I love the American flag, we need the American flag, but if you want to burn it, it's perfectly okay because the First Amendment, never mind if the First Amendment actually does not allow so-called symbolic speech such as flag burning. So anyway, I was completely ambivalent. If you go to Twitter now, she's back, they let her out, of course. So I really didn't care that Stuckey had been thrown into the Twitter jail cell. First of all, because I don't particularly care for her, but also because you might be able to say, Nate, it doesn't matter, okay? As a matter of principle, you had to be against it. That might be true, gang, if it told me something new about Twitter that I hadn't already previously known. But at this point in time in 2021, we should all know how Twitter rolls. We should know how all of these social media platforms operate, okay? It should not surprise us when Stuckey and others are banned for saying completely commonsensical, obvious things such as that Laurel Hubbard is not a woman, he is a man. Now, what actually interested me about this story is that I believe that this is a sign that we have crossed another Rubicon. Because it used to be that the only people who got banned on Twitter, right, they were kind of a low fish, okay? I've been in Twitter jail a couple of times, but I don't even have 1,400 followers on it. So I'm a tiny, minuscule presence on the platform. People like that, people like me, the tiny little people, were banned, thrown into Twitter jail. The anonymous accounts, okay, we just had one of Bronze Age Pervert's followers, Bronze Age Frog, I think. He was just permanently banned. Well, most people probably don't even know who he was outside of his circle of followers. A lot of people probably don't even know who Bronze Age Pervert was either, or is, if he's still in operation. I really don't know because I've never followed him, never really followed that story a lot. or it was people who maybe had a large following, but that's all that they had. They had a large-ish following on Twitter. There's a guy on Twitter I know who I don't follow, but one of my mutuals follows him, and he's been deactivated several times, always comes back with a new account and has to start over again. So kudos to him for his perseverance and his determination. But again, he doesn't have a blog. He doesn't have, as far as I know, he doesn't have a blog. He doesn't have a large presence outside of Twitter. Let me put it like that. He doesn't have a presence. He doesn't have a trans-platform presence, we might say, or a cross-platform presence. So it used to be those people, right? And sometimes just the people who you might make an argument are somewhat legitimately actually insane, like Alex Jones, which no one really cared about because, it's Alex Jones, so who cares about that? Now, however, with Stuckey's stint in the Twitter archipelago, Twitter has now said that anyone is open game who actually diverts from the narrative. And I think Stuckey was actually trying to test out that theory. I saw one of the first tweets that she sent out today after getting out of the Twitter cell, which was Laurel Hubbard is still a man and a man can't become a woman, something like that. And I don't think that she was punished again. But I don't think that she has to be punished again because the message has already been sent. You can be as mainstream as the most mainstream commentator ever. You could be respectable because she has a trans platform presence. She's on Twitter, she's on Instagram, she has her podcast, etc. You can have that. You can actually, have the backing of a fairly well-known corporation. I'm not going to say that the Blaze or the Blaze TV or Glenn Beck is the biggest thing in conservatism. If it was, we would be in even bigger trouble than we already are. But it does have clout. It does have a presence. People, multi-generational people across all states and across all platforms should at least have recognition of the name, The Blaze TV, Glenn Beck. And since Stuckey works for Beck and is not simply an independent commentator doing everything on her own, some of that clout rubs off on her because she is one of Beck's employees. So the fact that all of these things now have been erased away, none of these things matter anymore, is Twitter throwing down another gauntlet, saying, okay, all of you blue-checked mainstream people who talk a good game but don't really talk a lot about what is really important, and you're not really talking about actual serious things, you're not really offering any solutions besides the usual cliched pap that we've all heard 1,000 times before. Even you people are not safe anymore. Which means that nobody is safe. You have to toe the line completely because if you don't, you never know which tweet might be your last for an entire week. I think I was thrown into Twitter jail earlier this year for an entire week, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. I've been thrown in several times, gang, so it all kind of blurs in my head at this point in time. Had to make room for new things. So, that's the message that they're sending. And of course, the obvious point, the tactical end that they want to do by this is to make the mainstreamers even more scared than they already are. The Prudentialist, who has a great YouTube channel actually here as well, in one of his latest ones, he actually made mention of an interesting point that in one of his recent podcast episodes, the wunderkind himself, Ben Shapiro, had his team edit out a joke he made during the course of the recording about pansexuals because he said he didn't want to be boycotted. So already we have proof that the mainstream, the supposed lions and rock-ribbed, flint-chinned conservative commentators who are gonna go out there in the marketplace of ideas and they are gonna sumo drop and own all of these libs. Even they now are becoming squishes in the middle. They're all made of dough in the middle. They may have rock ribs, but everything, encased within those rock ribs is made out of dough and gelatin. This is simply going to exasperate that fear, because we can rant, we can rave, we can lament about it, gang, but the truth is, none of these big commentators, as far as I can see, none of these big commentators is going to do anything that could jeopardize their platforms, because this is their bread and butter. This is their spotlight. And that's just how human nature works. So now that Twitter has made it known that it doesn't matter how mainstream you are, how harmless you are, how many blue checks you have behind your name, or who you work for, if you can be thrown in jail for virtually anything, for any divergence from the narrative, it is going to cause all of our supposed conservative intellectual leaders to start policing themselves. Perhaps even more than they have already been, unbeknownst to us. So keep your eyes on that. This is also why I say, gang, that the future does not belong to social media. If we are actually going to rebuild the conservative movement and reconquer the country, refound the country, it's not going to be by using social media platforms. It's going to be going back to the old tried and true tricks, which is going to make it a lot slower, but it is also going to make it that much richer as well. Gang, I have been talking for far too long. As per usual, that's a habit I still haven't been able to break, even after my, like I said, unplanned hiatus. So I am putting a cork in it right there. Take care. Have a great weekend. Have a great week. Stay safe. Stay free. And I will chat at you all later. Ciao.